Afternoon, everybody, and hope you had a wonderful Monday. Mine was full to the brim, so I'm sorry I'm a couple minutes late. So before we get started, I have a lot of announcements I would like to make. First one is this weekend is the Legion conference, and so there'll be Legion members all over town, so please bring out your extremely friendly hats and welcome them. We must commend the hard work that this Legion has done to bring this here. So, and as well, the Legion has their Jake's Gift program, BCF at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. So if you haven't got your tickets, please go by the Legion and pick them up and support the Legion. They're really good for our community. As well, I would like to remind everybody the Rotary White Elephant sale is on Saturday, and they are collecting stuff all week. So if you want to donate anything and help the Rotary Club, check that out. Sale is at the arena. I think you're a new Rotary member, aren't you? Not yet. Oh. All right, the Valley Bus Society Agm is at 1:30 at the BCF on what day, Tony? Wednesday. On Wednesday. There's some boards that are looking for help, so I'm sure we got a ton of volunteers out there that are looking for things to do. So the Valley Bus Society is looking for board members. Heritage Arts and Culture is looking for members. Homestead Museum and the Stampede Society is looking for volunteers. So if you can get out to give a lot of these boards really honestly are an hour or two a month. They're not a big commitment, but it's a huge impact to the community. And as well, the season opener is May 11th and 12th for the stock cars, so get out there and check that out. And I want to thank the MS Walk. I did the MS Walk yesterday, and we had 80 people show up, so that was really incredible. But what I really want people to understand, you can't imagine the amount of people that donate to these things. I just want to read off the donors for just this one event. CFCW, Drum FM, Boston Pizza, Water Pure and Simple, Peterson's Auto Body, the Badlands Community Center, Friesen Brothers, Tim Hortons, McDonald's, A&W, Morin Lions, Extra Foods, Peaches Portable, Hometown Realty, Drumheller Mail, and Athena Winchester. That's what it took, all those volunteers to run that event. So hats off to our community. We have to be proud of all the local sponsorship we get. And that kind of just reminds us why we really need to shop local and support those who support us. And finally, I had a great morning this morning. I had 17 grade 9 students in Chambers here, all from Toronto with 4 chaperones. And now I know what it must feel like to be a premier or a prime minister, because they hammered some pretty tough questions at me. And you're on the spot, you have to answer. Actually, I had somebody tell me that most mayors would have denied that. That was a challenge, but hopefully I did all right. But yeah, it was very interesting how intrigued they are about our province and what we have here. So it was a pretty interesting day. One little guy had a lot of mud on his boots, so Linda and I were here cleaning up the chamber before you all came. But it was a lot of fun. So if you ever get that opportunity, if you ever try it, it's quite interesting. They'll be here next year, so maybe I'll get Deputy Mayor, whoever's on hand to do it. But anyways, now I'm going to swear in Councillor Tony Locker to be Deputy Mayor for the months of May and June.
According to the law, the office of Deputy Mayor for the town of Drumheller for the months of May and June 2019, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations, Tony. I'll put you to hard work. And thank you, Fred. Last 2 months, appreciate all the help. Thank you for looking after the event yesterday, the Sea Cadets, and it was a nice post you made on behalf of them. So we have another few proclamations I just want to read here. It's National Nursing Week, May 6th to May 12th. Whereas Nursing Week is celebrated each year across Canada, the week of Florence Nightingale's May 12th birthday. It's a time to recognize the year-round dedication and achievements of RNs and RPNs and LPNs, and to increase awareness of their contribution to the well-being of Canadians. And whereas it is important that we take the opportunity to honor and celebrate the achievements of the nurses across our country, and closer to home in our community. Let's take time to thank our nurses who make such an important contribution, providing superb nursing care and advocating for their patients. Therefore, I, Mayor Heather Colberg, do hereby proclaim May 6th to 12th National Nursing Week in the town of Drumheller. And let's be sure when we're out there thanking them, because we really need our nurses to stay in town. We had a bit of a nursing shortage, and I think they're getting those numbers back up. So let's make sure that they know we appreciate them. As well as like to proclaim International Economic Development Week, May 6th to 11th, whereas the International Economic Development Council is the largest professional economic development organization dedicated to serving economic developers and provide leadership and excellence in economic development for communities, and whereas economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. Therefore, I, Mayor Heather Colberg, on behalf of the town of Drumheller, do hereby proclaim May 6th to 11th as International Economic Development Week and recognize the importance of work of the economic developers. Pressure's on there, Sean. And finally, I'd like to proclaim McHappy Day, May 8th, whereas established in 1977, McHappy Day is a long-standing Canadian tradition. Whereas on McHappy Day, an annual day of community giving in support of Ronald McDonald House and other community charities, each of the McDonald's restaurants across Canada will donate $1 from the sale of every Happy Meal, Big Mac, and McCafe beverage. Therefore, I, Mayor Heather Colberg, on behalf of the town of Drumheller, do hereby proclaim May 8th McHappy Day and encourage both adults and children to participate in this worthy charitable cause. And I'm sure if you have to work that day, so come out and see some of your counselors, and we will do our part. So enough of me. Daryl, I'm going to let you take over in actually Julia.
Yeah, and Julia's not here, so I'm going to talk about the communication strategy, smartphone app. So Julia's drafted a overarching or overall communication strategy, so it's more than just simply the smartphone app. Smartphone app is one component of it. Administration's just reviewing it, and she told me last week is that we'll have it at the next COW meeting for council to look at. So it's a document that talks about the website, it's how we're communicating with our public, and smartphone is just one part of it. So.
Okay, so we'll move that on to May 21st.
Yes. Yeah. Toboggan Hill Lease, we have, we actually just had a meeting this afternoon and had a couple of ideas around developing the area by the Green Tree Water Tower space in there. Once it sort of, at the same time that we do some of the fencing for our cemetery expansion that we started last year. So once we have that fenced in there, we have an ability to be able to create a bit of a barricaded type access so that we prevent vehicles from going through there and allow toboggans to do so. That's something we'll be working on over the next few weeks, and hopefully have a bit of an update probably in the end of June sometime.
Okay, I'll move that to June 24th. Go ahead, Greg.
Ms. Colberg, we're looking to the date of October 10th for our tabletop emergency scenario exercise in conjunction with AEMA. We have received a grant of $5,000 from the provincial government in order to hire a consultant, have some resources to put on a tabletop scenario. We believe that will be beneficial for everyone, and then from that we'll go to a functional. We should have some money left over. We could also plan a functional tabletop perhaps later this year, early next year, for our emergency preparedness. We recently had a level 300 incident command training course here in town. Barb and I attended, other staff as well. That is the last level required by directors and deputy directors under the new provincial law. So that was really good, and we did a practice incident scenario, and everybody took their roles. Of course, it was all play acting, but still everybody had roles and they had to answer correctly. And Barb and I took turns as incident commander, and so it was really good. So I'm a firm believer in training. I have spoken to our AEMA field officers, and Darwin Durney as well. We'll come up with a consultant selected in a proper way, and we'll start planning our disaster scenario. So we have some ideas already. We did away with zombies right off the bat. We're not going to do zombies, but we are going to do something completely applicable to the valley, something we may experience at some point. So I can update probably in 6-7 weeks or so when we get more decided.
Perfect. Anybody got any questions, Greg? Okay, so do you want me to just move you to the end of June as well? 24th? Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Just got one comment. I want to thank you, Greg, from the Homestead Museum Society for the help that you've given them in regards to their emergency planning.
No, I'm going to meet with Gilles on Wednesday afternoon. I gave him the template, and we'll work through it. I think it looks imposing, the size of the museum and as the size of the plan, but I'm sure it can be tailored. And as I said to him, the matrix involved, they won't be able to fill all that, but we can come up with a functional plan that can interface with our information, and I'm sure it'll work out. Yeah.
Perfect. And just so there's a little bit of background on that, the Homestead Museum Society is requiring through the Alberta Museum Association that they have an emergency management plan in place. Like most organizations, I think nowadays in the last year and a half, there's been a move towards that. So we kind of struggled as to where to start, as we've never done one before. So Greg has been a fantastic resource. So we appreciate that.
Way to go, Greg. Anybody else? Okay, well, let's move on, and we are going to have a presentation. So we're going to have the public library give us some update on activities. So I will let you ladies have her. Emily, you're going to do the talking?
I am going to do the talking. It's
There
very
you go.
exciting. So first of all, thank you for having us, making some time for us at your meeting tonight. Usually, or at least the last few years, we've presented earlier in the year, which sort of between when we presented last fall and when we're presenting now, which gives us a chance to go over our budget, but also bring the year-end statistics. As we've moved our budget presentation earlier, and we've not been able to come with the year-end statistics, just how things are going so far. So we wanted to come back and provide you with those because they looked great last year. But also the library has been doing lots of things the last few months, and we wanted to give you all an update on that. Go to the next slide. We want to thank you for sure for not only your financial support in this current budget, but for your ongoing support. We feel very much supported by Drumheller Town Council. We see that as a long-standing tradition, and especially at a time when a lot of communities and even provinces are not choosing to invest in their libraries, that commitment is huge. We really, really appreciate that. All right, so our year-end stats, just a quick picture. Our circulation went up by 11.8%. Our program participation up by 17.8%, and recorded computer use up by over 50%, which is a lot more people using the library in a lot of different ways. Interestingly, our entrances a little bit down, although now that Frida's or Black Oak Eatery is established there, the numbers seem to be going back up. People really like to be able to come and get a snack and hang out at the library. So toward the end of last year, we finished our plan of service. Normally traditionally we've been doing a 3-year plan of service. This year, because 2023 is our 100th anniversary. We wanted to have extra time to ramp up to that and have something special planned. So we planned developed a 5-year plan of service with a lot of things that we're quite excited about. And we wanted to get a running start on that. So we jumped right in and turned our staff office into a program room, which has already been used for study and tutoring sessions, text clinics, ukulele meetings, children's programming. And somebody came in and used it to film a video for homework. There was a chance that we were going to get involved in the movie production a couple of weeks ago, depending on the weather, and unfortunately we're not going to be in a movie, but we had that space available if they needed it.
We were in a movie though, weren't we?
Not that movie. The library wasn't in this. Kevin Costner did not come into the library. Community members shared their experiences and expertise in a lot of different ways, and we're hoping to continue to find new ways to do that. So far, we have our art classes, travel nights, and other presentations, and we were able to bring in some extra presentations and workshops for people to participate in. We are hoping with the extra program space and the start of bringing music into the library, we'd love to start having monthly live music presentations. So you can keep an eye out for that. Yeah, go ahead. Society-sponsored free library cards meant that not only that we could offer free library cards to everybody, but that we could do things like I guess in 2017 we went out to markets. In 2018 we did a library card drive. We sent information to teachers and also directly to parents and gave them the opportunity to register their children for library cards. They just sent the filled out card back through the teacher and we collected them that way. It's not something that I would want to put, a burden I would want to put on teachers if there was money involved, because that's just, it's extra responsibility that they just don't need. They're busy. But we were able to make it really easy, and even for those who didn't sign up, have that information about what kids can get out of maybe their already existing library cards directly into families' houses, which was exciting. And then the library worked with Green Tree School to run a grant-funded pilot that has library staff staffing their school library for 15 hours a week. They haven't had library staff since 2012, so there was a considerable backlog of things that needed doing, but we've plowed through lots of that. Of course, we want to be supporting school library services for all students in Drumheller, so we've also been working with St. Anthony's School and Green Tree. We invited DVSS. They haven't jumped to participate yet, but working together to find ways that we can apply for grants together to bring interesting things to the community that all students can participate in. We recently applied for a grant that would allow us to develop a youth story festival for Alberta Culture Days. Mayor Kohlberg wrote us a support letter for that. We sure appreciate that. And our annual book donations to school libraries. That one we are able to get DVSS involved. They send over their school librarian to pick some books. And this year we had a teacher from a local Hutterites colony school come and choose some books as well, which was exciting. So in 2019, we jumped into all of the plans we'd made for changing our spaces around. We developed our new youth space. In order to make room for that, we moved the nonfiction up into the same space that the adult fiction is in. At the time, it was intended more just to create that extra space in the back, but we've heard from staff and volunteers for sure that they really enjoy having it up there, and the area seems to be better used, and we hope to increase that. We turned what used to be the youth space into an adult-oriented quiet space, so great for tutoring or hanging out somewhere comfortable just to read or think or listen to music on your headphones. That was something that people have asked us for a number of times, and at the time, with one program room and the kid spaces and adult spaces all right next to each other, that was really difficult to provide. Now we have a number of options in this lovely blue space here, also in our second program room, and some of our spaces along the window that aren't nearly so cramped because we've been able to move some of that furniture away from the windows and into the quiet space and the youth space. So in January, we ran a pilot to see how the community would respond to extended hours on Mondays and Fridays, which certainly simplifies our open hours. We're just open 9 until 8 on Monday through Friday, and then 9 to 5 on Saturdays. And that went really well. We have people there during those extra hours every week. And let's start there. With the additional funds that council was able to budget for us this year, we're able to make the extended hours and free library cards permanent. So we have 6 extra hours of a place that people can come for free and take advantage of connections with other community members, books, movies, spaces to be together or just be quiet. Sorry? Third spaces. There we go. And our society recently provided the funding to start a circulating musical instrument collection, which is housed in our second program room. So far we have, or the society funded 6 ukuleles, building on the success that the local ukulele club has been having. And a guitar and a piano. The piano will not circulate, but we chose one that is suitable for children who are taking piano lessons to be able to practice on that electronic piano at the library. Since we advertised that we had these, someone has donated an electric guitar and a violin, and we've had other people express interest in contributing to our collection, so this is going to be really a neat collection to share with the community. So our plans moving forward, one of the things as we were developing other spaces in the library, we decided that we would like to sort our children's books into categories. Currently they're sorted by author, which is easy for us to find books, but much easier for children and families to find books that are of interest. If you have, here's the machine section, all of the tractor books are right there. If you have 10 minutes to run into the library, you know exactly where to go. Our youth space, we left it relatively undeveloped because we want as much as possible our youth to take ownership of the space and take a significant hand in shaping what it turns out to be. So these are some of the youth that have been coming to some of our programming already, have aged with our programming, and they have been coming eagerly with color suggestions and doing actually a really great job of keeping in mind the needs and interests of people who aren't like them, as well as what they would like to have. So I'm looking forward to having more youth participate in these get-togethers, but I have high expectations of what we're seeing so far. And finally, accessibility. So our work so far, when we were moving all of the shelving around, it was important to us to make sure that all of our passages were easily accessible for people who use mobility aids. All of them exceed the recommended requirements for accessibility by 8 to 10 inches, and we have extra space around furniture. We're leaving a space open at each of our seating areas so that somebody in a wheelchair or a walker can easily participate without having to move unsuitable furniture out of the way. We've seen that used already, which is wonderful. You can see the bathroom now. You can now see the bathroom. We've had many, many people hustle children out into the BCF, saying, no, we have one right here. Now you can see it, but the heavy wooden door is a barrier still for many people. So we're currently working on sourcing an automatic door, which will largely be funded with some grant funding that we had set aside from a couple of years ago, specifically for increasing the accessibility of the library. Do you have questions?
Questions, anybody? Comments? Christine?
Thank you, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure being on the library board and working with you guys. I'm so excited about everything we're doing, and I'm always just jumping off the walls telling people there's musical instruments now. Like, it's so great and amazing presentation, and I think the library, the direction that we're putting it in, it's just going to become that third space for everyone. So exciting. Thank you.
Lisa?
So you're taking donations of musical instruments?
Yes.
Perfect, because I have some woodwinds that I'll bring down. They tend to collect a lot of dust in my house, unfortunately, especially since the iPhone has been developed. So, yeah. But great job, and it looks fantastic. I can't wait to take my kids down to check it out.
Anybody else? And just curious, you made a comment, so you're trying to get the schools to support you on some grants for library work?
The plan is to partner with the schools, so we're choosing projects that we can participate in together. For one example, we've been looking at grants for STEM equipment, so circuitry kits and robots and that sort of thing that we would buy, say 6, have 2 at the library, 2 at Green Tree and 2 at St. Anthony's, but then be able to rotate them so that they're getting maximum use. They still feel fresh for longer, that sort of thing.
And did you say the libraries are going obsolete in schools? Or they don't get...
Library staff in schools is less and less common in Alberta in particular, I think, because there aren't any requirements for the level at which library services within the schools are expected to be in Alberta.
Interesting. Tom?
Yeah, a budget question. So approximately how much did it cost to provide free library cards? Like, how much were you taking in before, and how much does that now impact the budget?
We're estimating about $10,000 a year.
Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. Fantastic presentation. Evolution isn't a big enough word for what you're doing in terms of trying to make the library a relevant community space. Curious, are there currently any vacancies on the board?
Yes. We have to have between 5 and 10, and so right now we have 8, I think it is. So we have 2 vacancies, but we don't advertise them, right? They're
Understood.
just in case someone comes up.
I moved here 20 years ago last Wednesday, and one of my clients here put my name forward for the library board before the ink was even dry on my mortgage. She's recently moved back to town, and I'm going to pay her the same compliment. She should get back on that board. So, yeah.
Anybody else? Well, I just know how passionate Christine is about your board. She loves it and she works hard, and I appreciate everything you guys do for our community. So thanks so much for your time. Appreciate you all coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, we shall move on to 4.41. Greg, discussion on medical first response for fire departments.
Thank you, Ms. Kohlberg. Since April of 2015, the Alberta Medical Response Program has been operating in the province. As of today, there are 279 municipalities and agencies that are signed on to the program. There's a couple of different ways. We have not, the town of Drumheller has not signed on to the program yet. There was some discussion, councillors who served in the previous council may recall. They're asking us again, the organizer, a fellow named John Hine, works for AHS, and he's a medical, well, he's also a paramedic, but he's also a strategist for AHS. The program, depending on how you look at it, there's been at times a lack of proper ambulance coverage, and our volunteer firefighters with their first aid have attended medical calls, sometimes of a serious nature, sometimes a call could be a motor vehicle accident, and they get there, and because of no other, they may be the first one there, they are the ones who could be providing immediate first aid on scene. Alberta Health is seeking to cover off, basically, this isn't anything that our members haven't been doing for years, and would not stop doing, not because we haven't filled out a checklist, say this says we will or won't go to these calls. The chief and the members feel morally responsible, be that aside from the policy and the medical first responder program itself. The coordinator that we've had some conversations with over the years is very much willing to come to talk to council to further explain how the program works, why the program is in place, and answer your questions. And as I said, I can talk about it, and I can give numbers out, and I can how it pans out practically, but he would be able to explain it. If council would like to hear from this fellow, I could arrange for him to come in and brief council at a nearest future as possible. And I'll answer any questions. I've gone over it very quickly. It is very much in depth, and it is meant to serve the public. However, it does exist, I believe. There was some talk years ago that the AHS would have perhaps even separate vehicles available for on-call firefighters to use when there was no ambulance available, to pick someone up and to transport them. There's good and bad in both ways of looking at it. That never materialized, us having, say, an ambulance or a Suburban or something that could be used. So some of our work now is limited to, we do go to the more serious calls, and our members get a lot of lift assist calls, and the calls, the medical related calls have increased every year up to 2017, from 9 documented in 2011 to 25 in 2017, and 23 last year. So that, however you look at statistics, that's roughly the same as. So they are going to these calls. The program does permit certain resources if we sign up, certain training resources, equipment resources, and there's regular updates, of course, and stuff on protocols as to how basically what is the industry standard for response or treatment, et cetera, for our guys that are, they're not paramedics. We do have one paramedic who's an on-call firefighter, however, and in the case where he might be on the scene, he would attend if need be. So there's no reduction in care. A paramedic would accompany that person in the ambulance, whether he's a volunteer, on-call firefighter or not. So it isn't a case of we have a doctor treats, say, somebody, and then the doctor backs off and somebody else takes them to the hospital. In such cases, if a doctor was on scene, just as an example, the doctor would maintain the care until that person was delivered off to competent medical care at the nearest emergency, facility of a hospital.
Thanks, Greg. Comments? Lisa?
I just think that it would be great if that individual could come and give us a presentation as well. I noticed you flipping through some paperwork on it. If you wouldn't mind sharing that so we could be a bit more apprised in depth before that presentation, that would be awesome.
No, these are, Ms. Zacharuk, these are just my notes I've made, stuff that they've sent me about briefing. I mean, I've got about 3 inches of it. It's not keeping secrets at all. I'd be happy to send it out. It's all, they talk about the different levels of care. We initially completed, how many pages? A 35-page checklist. Fire chief and I went into Calgary in 2016, late 2016, and sat down with Mr. Hine and completed what we thought but there's literally, well, there's double because they're on both sides, so it's over 65 pages of, and some of it is, I mean, there's all the level of, the series of level A to E, the level of calls that members might attend, mostly Delta and Echo calls, which are the most serious if they receive that. But I'd be happy to send anything forward for briefing. There's, I mean, I've got all kinds of stuff, and it would be, we could be here till midnight going through it all.
Well, and that's my point. I'd like to be able to make an informed decision, so
Certainly.
if you could provide that, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll put the best stuff together and talk to Linda and get it out.
Okay,
Fred?
perfect.
CEO. Yep.
Is this leading towards us having to make a budget decision, whether there's training or anything, or just that we designate that we're ready for that kind of effort?
Right. We sign on to the program, Mr. Makawecki, and it opens us up to certain liability coverage. Everybody, as long as everybody's acting in good faith and not being, we all understand, acting in good faith, not being negligent or directly negligent. Certain training materials, certain supplies that might be used, anything, they seem fairly generous in what they offer. They will supply for beyond what our guys may already have on board in the event of medical attention is needed for somebody. It does not affect our, I had a long discussion with our insurance representative from AUMA. It does not affect our liability at all within our operations, as long as everybody, of course, and we fully expect, and I don't expect to be anything different, operating in good faith to, mistakes will happen, but operating in good faith toward the end of the welfare of this person.
Jay?
Sorry.
Thank you. So, Greg, what I want to just clarify is ambulance coverage in this community has been an issue for a number of years, ever since we went back to the provincial system. But even when we were having our own locally administered ambulance society, it didn't change the fact that AHS could still direct those ambulances once they'd taken someone to a transfer on Red Deer. AHS held the hammer to be able to redirect them back to Calgary, and no matter what time it was in their shift, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess what I'm curious about is there's been a number of intractable, solutionless problems that we faced over a number of years. And as much as I'm loath to want to officially accept the lack of appropriate ambulance coverage, if this program would actually solve the problem with additional equipment, with additional training, with additional supplies, and even up to and including an additional vehicle, if it solves the problem, I'm interested in hearing more about it. If it is really just transferring, officially transferring expectations that have already been, unofficially transferred for years, not so much interested. So, yeah, I don't want to give up the fight that, I think one of the things that the task force, the medical subcommittee, was able to determine was that just through the wording of our ambulance society's agreement with the province of Alberta, that when they reamalgamated to a provincial body, left us in a position to be not covered, whereas the wording of the agreement that the Three Hills and area ambulance society had with the province of Alberta required that when they reamalgamated to the provincial system, that then 24-hour ambulance coverage was mandatory. So if it really is as simple as wanting a do-over on the wording of our exit clause with the body that fight hasn't been fought effectively enough, I'd much rather pursue that. But if that's another 2 to 3 year fight versus just solving the problem of not having appropriate ambulance coverage, then let's solve the problem. So does that make sense?
Christine?
So just to try to wrap my head around it, is this are we just going to provide training for existing volunteer firefighters, or are we basically making another town ran group that is like an on-call kind of local, I'm just trying to.
No, Mr. Mott, I think whether we sign on or not, the level of service to the public right now, because the firefighters Don't want to let anybody down, not to sound corny, but that's really where it comes. I don't think there's going to be any real difference in the level of service. They're still going to go, they're still going to help, and I don't believe, my honest feeling is I don't believe signing on to the program solves all the problems. I don't believe that. I believe it may help, and it may provide us with some training opportunities, some supplies, maybe better information about medical care, keeping in mind that we have volunteer on-call firefighters who are trained, to combat fires and to help in emergencies, and they're trained in first aid, but they're not paramedics, and they're not doctors, and they're not nurses. So there's a limited expectation of what they can do. I've thought from the beginning that, however well-intentioned, I really believe some of this is meant because there are times, and I've witnessed it myself recently, where an ambulance was 45 minutes away. I was standing there and I heard the radio. It was 45 minutes away. Now, in a community this size, I'm not trying to sound negative or unduly gloomy, but I don't find that acceptable. Now, I feel better knowing that I've got, the fire department would be there to help and would going to come and help the citizens of Drumheller and the area and do whatever they can, as opposed to everybody standing around and waiting for an ambulance, which could show up in not a how do you say it, an opportune time. It could take, and I'm just find that unacceptable. So I think people's hearts are in the right spot, but I think it can also give the idea of AHS trying to appear to download some responsibility because they don't have the mechanism to cover.
And
everything.
so is this something completely new that we're looking at doing, or are other communities doing it? How has
Yeah.
it been working for
No,
them?
In Alberta, there's approximately 279 agencies and municipalities that have signed on to the medical first responder. Starland County and Munson have signed on to it. And it's, as I said, and the chief and I discussed as recently as this afternoon, there's not going to be any real, and I don't want to seem cryptic, there's not going to be any real change. They're still going to go and do these things. To sign on to the medical first responder program, as I said, would open up certain avenues: training, material, some liability coverage by AHS, perhaps better communication. Everything, as far as I can tell, we troubleshoot calls, and we could look back and see what we could have done differently all the time. I don't think things are going to change appreciably, except for as the reasons that I mentioned. But this fellow is a very nice fellow. He's very knowledgeable, and he's the southern coordinator for the southern part of Alberta. As I said, he'd be happy to come and speak to council, and you can hear directly from him.
Tom?
Yeah, so what you're saying is that our people have been doing this, are doing this, will continue to do this without the proper training and background and resources, and this would give them those things.
No, Mr. Zrisky, we already have training. Everybody has first aid.
This would
Everybody has valid
enhance their
first aid.
training and their
Well,
ability
this
and
could,
improve it.
Yes, like they could free up, for example, they gave us the example if we had 10 members that needed valid first aid validation training, this could be expedited by being part of the medical first responder before their, first aid certification was to expire, get near expiry. They would help us get more timely first aid training. It's not going to make anybody into a paramedic or a doctor on site. It's just supplies such as naloxone, things like that could be. We have those things already, but I mean, training, information. I don't really think there's going to be, I'm sorry, Ms. Colbert? Communication, I don't think there's going to be, but right now, if our fire department gets a call of somebody, the ambulance is not available, and they get a call of somebody who's perhaps having a seizure or is laying on a sidewalk somewhere, I mean, they're going to go, along with the police most likely, see what's going on and do what can be done to help that person. And that will continue, and that has been going on, and that will continue to go on.
So the cost for this,
Nothing, no, it's absorbed in our, there's no extra cost for us to sign up onto it.
okay.
Lisa?
Have you reached out to Starland or Munson for some feedback on the program?
I haven't spoken to them, I've spoken to two others, and they kind of are saying the same as I am, that they have had some training benefit, regular communications, some supplies, but they've been comporting themselves as they always did before entry into the program.
Gotcha.
And a lot of this is based on some of the stuff that they, I guess you could say, if it was a different type of discipline, you would say, we don't have to do this, but we are doing it because it's the right, not to sound corny, it's the right thing to do, and somebody has to do something. If a basic life support or an advanced life support unit isn't available.
Yep, no, agreed. Thanks.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, as far as the Economic Medical Committee, they do meet with the ambulance regularly, and they have brought in a firefighter into those meetings so that they can actually speak for firefighters. So it's really important. So what I'd like to even take that a bit further is bring that fellow in, but I think if we could bring in Fire Chief Bruce and Deputy Fire Chief Crush in those meetings so that we can have that guy's input, but also get their feedback to see if, make sure that they're in favor of this. Okay, any other questions? Alrighty. Well, goodness. Anything else? Let's do some round table. Christine? Jay? Fred? Lisa? Tom?
Couple of things. So one of the things that we've been talking about at MPC has been Airbnbs. And there seems to be a proliferation, lots of them. Yeah, but anyways, so we've been talking about it. We've been talking to Palliser, and Palliser would be willing to do a kind of a study, a report on Airbnbs for us, but we need council to kind of request it. So Tony and I at the MPC can't just say do it. We need council administration to talk to Palliser and see if they could do a report for us. I don't know if we want it, but we at MPC would kind of like it, but this would be a report for council on them.
So is Palliser asking for an official motion from council?
I don't know if we even need a motion other than direction.
Oh, okay, okay.
Tom or Fred?
I think it would be, I think it would be great, and I think that people that are running an Airbnb have to realize we're not trying to choke or over-regulate or anything, but if we can include it in our inventory of services that we can offer the public, then when it's a long, excuse me, when it's a long weekend and the Tourist Information Center says everybody's booked up, if we had another 50 Airbnbs that we could refer, then that would service our visitors better as well.
Yeah, just further to this, the issue is that I don't believe we have Airbnbs in our land use bylaw. So we're just wondering if they should be, because we do have tourist dwellings. Well, an Airbnb is kind of a tourist dwelling and kind of not, depending on what services they offer. Tourist dwellings are regulated, but Airbnbs are kind of, well, they might be, they might not be.
So you don't need a motion, you just need the blessing? Okay, so we got the blessing of council? Okay. Go, Christine, go ahead.
I just have a question. What does Palliser need to do? What are they studying? Like, this is a B&B here, this is one here. Why do we need Palliser? Just curious.
I think to give council a bit of direction in line of, like, we will have to amend the land use bylaw, to give council information about how many of them are there or what do they look like. Should they be regulated the same as tourist dwellings, or should they be a different category, et cetera? Just kind of an overall, or what are some of the other communities doing, for example? Because some other communities have Airbnbs in their bylaws, but.
Jay?
As well, I agree. I think also just in fairness, a business is a business is a business is a move we've been trying to make with capturing all home-based businesses. And so that's a fair, approach to dealing with our own regulations around how businesses operate in Drumheller, as it is a privilege and not a right. And so, yeah, I think it's appropriate for Palliser to weigh in and give council some direction.
We'll send Palliser a note about that. And I think to echo Tom's comments about it, Palliser's involvement would be more on the zoning and land use bylaw requirements, as opposed to, I don't think they're going to go out and actually count which ones are and which aren't. So, but it's more about how they fits into our bylaws, or if we need to change them.
All right, you said you had two things. Are you good? Tony? Administration? All right, we will call this meeting adjourned at 5:22. Wow, I'm going to be home for supper.